Sunday Square Off here on 12 News. Almost 60,000 Americans lost their lives in the Vietnam War, but more than 40 years after the war's end, stereotypes of American soldiers in that war live on. In the Morenci Marines, A Tale of Small Town America and the Vietnam War, ASU history professor and author Kyle Longley helps us understand the war through the families in an Arizona mining town. Today, he's taking on the stereotypes of the soldiers who returned from Vietnam and why they're wrong. Welcome back to Square Off, Kyle Longley.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Good to see you again. So this is based on an op-ed you wrote titled Grunts, and based on your book, Grunts. And it also focuses on 1967. It's a series in the Times focusing on Vietnam 1967. Why was 1967 such a turning point in that war and in the country?
Well, I think 1967 is important. I really think 1968 is more important in terms of the transition of the combat experiences in Vietnam. In 67, though, you're seeing escalation of the war. More people are dying. This is the second, one of the highest years that more people die. And so 67, you're seeing battles at Con Thien. You're seeing these large-scale engagements with the North Vietnamese as well as the Viet Cong.
So you call Vietnam the Grunts War. Two things. What's a grunt? Because many people may not have heard that slang.
Yeah.
And why was it the Grunts War?
Well, I think all wars are grunts wars. But the grunts is a term that's used to describe the combat soldier and the grunts that he makes as he's hauling around a 50 or 60 pound pack. And so the grunts, and that's where the term stuck with them.
And what is the stereotype that's lasted the longest about the returning GIs?
I think it's the negative stereotypes. Too often have been the case. And you saw this played out in movies. Drug-addled, long-haired hippies, disillusioned. We saw this play out too often in the 70s and the 80s, especially on the movies. And unfortunately, kids today, a lot of what they get are from movies. And
there's the image of the draft dodger, number one. You put some numbers up that show, you know what, maybe it wasn't the case.
No, I mean, in most cases before 68, most of the people who went to Vietnam were volunteers. Now, they may have been draft induced, but they did many times volunteer to go because they saw it as a crusade. It's after 68 that you see a dramatic change in the attitudes as we start to withdraw.
Bring this to today. Men and women returning from Iraq and Afghanistan are hailed as heroes.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it feels like after the big welcome, they just vanish. What are the differences between 67 and today, and why doesn't it seem like things are getting better?
Well, I think the major part is there is a difference. The ones that were coming back from Vietnam in 1966 and 68 were oftentimes being met by people who were questioning why they served. Why would you fight in this war? And again, a common stereotype became they were baby killers. How could you support this immoral war? So, in some cases they got spit upon. Others, they were yelled at. That wasn't everybody's experience by any stretch of the imagination, but it became too common a one. But the commonality between the two people is that the vets today and those in that time is there seems to be a collective amnesia that has developed about our military operations in those countries. We forget that we're still fighting in Afghanistan. And when they come home, the amnesia, I think, relates to things like they don't receive the VA benefits they were promised. They don't receive the support they were promised. And today we know there are too many veterans committing suicide. Too many are suffering from many other diseases that are not being treated, and our government has not done a good job. And sometimes it's due to, well, we don't want to have to pay for these. Well, we invested in the war. We should invest in our veterans.
All right. Kyle Longley, thanks so much for joining us. Let's hold up that book, Grunts. That's the column based on this book, Grunts, and the Morenci Marines. We had Kyle on a year ago to talk about that. Read the Morenci Marines. It is a great story about a town in Arizona that made the ultimate sacrifice.
Ultimate.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for joining us.
All right.